Hello! The year was 1989. Nintendo had just released their mighty Game Boy. Look, here's one. And the world was about to be taken by storm by a handheld gaming device that had different cartridges you could swap in and out and didn't have games that were a load of old shit like all the previous ones. But they were not the only company developing a handheld game system. For a company called Epix were doing the same, and then Atari released it and called it the Lynx. Look, here's one now. Dun, 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 dun. Technically a Lynx 1, as we refer to them, because it was redesigned quite quickly for reasons we shall get onto. Now, I remember this being released in like 1990-ish in the UK, but apparently it came out in 1989 everywhere else. So it was kind of at about the same time as the Game Boy, but my God, technically it blew it out of the bloody water. Although it was not the most successful thing, in fact it was dead within 5 years of release, but we shall come on to the reasons for that later. Let's have a look at the hardware. Now I should point out, this Lynx one is inactive and broken, and has two major differences from a working one. The first is that that button's missing, as you can probably tell. The not the Y button, but the A button upside down, which I'll explain in a moment. And secondly, somebody has tried, in not the most effective manner, to repair the power supply connector, and just left a big wire coming out. And they didn't do a very good job because it's all still busted. That's good, isn't it? So as you can see, it's frickin' massive. It's like a house brick with a bit of another brick attached to it, frankly. I mean, compare that to the Game Boy. And, you know, the Game Boy, you needed a large pocket to put it in. The Lynx, it needed its own frickin' bag. The screen is physically larger than the Game Boy, you will notice. However, it is not actually as high resolution. This was like 160 by 144. This is about 160 by 100, or 160 by 102, or a very strange number like that. Interestingly, though, more of a widescreen display than pretty much anything else used at the time, which is quite forward-thinking, I suppose. And of course, the Game Boy does like a few shades of grey, whereas this does many, many beautiful colours. Now, various interesting things of this design. The first is that the cartridges go into the side here, and then this flap closes over them. So it's all internally kept, which is quite nice. Secondly, it's fucking massive, just in case you didn't notice. Like too freaking big. We'll get onto that in a moment. Secondly, now the buttons, when all present, are repeated up and down. And the reason is there is a flip function. Hold down pause and option 2. Well, just press them if I remember actually. And the screen flips, and you can then play it with the joypad under your right thumb in case you're left-handed or just prefer playing on it like that. I don't know. It's the only thing I can think of that actually does that. I'm sure there must be something else in the world, but I can't think of it off the top of my head, or maybe I've never bloody heard of it. Let's flip it back. Boink. There we are. Amazing. It also is the only console I can think of that has games released for it. Well, only a couple. Off the top of my head, Gauntlet 3 and I think Raiden, where you would actually play them vertically. So you could use the screen vertically, which is quite interesting. And, you know, control it down the bottom and push the buttons up here and discover that it's pretty much impossible to actually play like that easily. So that wasn't the best of plans. But hey, we were the wild west of handheld gaming. So yeah, you got volume, you got headphone jack, Comlinks port, Comlinks being something to connect up with other Atari Lynxes and play multiplayer. I think you could have like up to some crazy amounts, 18 players. That was it, 18 players you could have at once, although most games basically allowed you to have 2, 4 or 1. So yeah, I'm sure there must have been something that used 18 players. Can't think of what it was off the top of my head. And you'd all need, obviously, your own Atari Lynx and your own cartridge, I believe. There's brightness for the screen, for it's a little CRT type thing in it. And that's about the lot, apart from a lot of bloody empty space. The story goes that the designers of the Lynx showed it to the, the mighty bods at the top of the company and said, look, we have made this handheld. And they're like, oh, it's not quite big. We want something like physically large, so it, justifies the cost. So then they made this. And they went, oh, it's too big. What have you done that for? Oh, it's too late now. We've got to release it. And the engineers were like, you stupid bastards, you specifically asked for this. So there's actually quite a lot of space inside it, which then led to the Lynx 2, which we will go on to in a very short amount of time. Hey, Stuart, you shout, where do the batteries go? The answer is Switzerland on holiday. But before that, they go in this thing at the back. 6 AA's. Yep, 6 AA batteries. That's 2 more than the old Game Boy took, and I'll tell you what, the battery life wasn't quite as good. And that, my friends, was the understatement of the century. You would get 4 hours tops out of a Lynx, and I do mean tops. That was if you'd like bought really new batteries, whereas the Game Boy would easily give you like 12 hours, wouldn't it? I mean, 14 hours was certainly not unheard of, but this, yeah, not the best in the way of battery life. I mean, you're more realistically looking at about 3 from what I recall. And, you know, batteries were bloody expensive then, and that's a problem. A game like The Viking Child, say, takes over 90 minutes to complete, and you can't save game or anything. So if you haven't basically got new batteries, you're probably gonna be knackered. And, yeah. Put it this way, wherever you took it, you probably wanted to plug it in. Well, if you're wondering when the Game Gear came out, by the way, the sort of third of this triumvirate, that was in 1991. Which is an interesting date, because that is when they released the more easily portable, although thicker, Atari Lynx 2. This is the one most of us will recognise. Yeah, considerably smaller in the old length, a little bit thicker, nothing to write home about. But more importantly, the screen is better. The headphone socket, I believe, now has stereo output, whereas that only had mono output, which I always found a bit odd. And most importantly of all, wait for it, better battery life. You get about an extra hour, just under, which doesn't sound like a lot in the scheme of things, but bearing in mind that, you know, you were lucky to get 3.5 hours, really, out of the first one, that's quite a considerable percentage increase. The only thing is, they did change the D-pad for this. This isn't an awful D-pad, but I always found the Lynx one sort of better. But the Lynx one did have the major problem of if you don't have big hands, then, yeah, you're going to have great bloody difficulty with it. So the setup's pretty similar. The only real difference is the games now slot in the back like that. You've got some rubber to go under your hands there. Batteries go in the bottom. And that's about it, really. Cartridge goes in the top. No longer has a sort of clasp. It's just here and in, and does all your gubbins you need. Oh, there's also a backlight button. Forgot that. You can now turn the backlight off if you pause it and want to go off somewhere, so it uses far less battery, which is quite a useful thing, because I don't know if we mentioned this, but the battery life's really bloody poor. Also, it's still quite huge. Anyway, let's not get into that. Let's have a think about why the Lynx didn't succeed then just quickly, and the Game Boy kicked its arse around the playground 15 times. Considering this is, as we will see in a moment, a much more technically advanced unit. Well, price is a big thing. It was like twice as much as a Game Boy, to say the least. Battery life and portability, hey, pretty portable, massive battery life. Nowhere near as portable, tiny battery life. You see where this is going? Didn't really reach the shops in the same way. Nintendo had massive sort of reach in the US and Japan at the time. They had basically cornered the console market, so the name recognition was much better. And let's be honest here, although the Game Boy games were far more primitive in general, there was a lot of really good ones for the Game Boy and nowhere near as many titles for the Lynx. And yeah, there's not really that many must-have games, but I do love the Atari Lynx. That's why I have all the bloody games. Somebody said, oh, do you know they do like an EverDrive cartridge now, so you can put it in your Lynx and then play all the games? I'm like, yeah, don't really need that. I've kind of bought them all over the years, back in the days when they weren't insanely expensive. I've got all the games except for 2, actually. One I don't have is Missile Command and Super Asteroids. Or is it Super Asteroids and Missile Command? Can't remember which way round they put it. I've never been able to get a copy of that. And the other game is, I don't think I've got NHL Hockey. I had a cartridge of it, I'm sure I did, and it doesn't seem to be with them. I don't know if I've lost it somewhere around the house. I should probably find another one, but other than that, I've got a pretty much complete collection. And I'll tell you what, there was no actual way to find out which games were released in the UK and which only in the US, so I've just sort of collected most of the US ones. Now, these are all the standard Atari cartridges. I have not got the Telegames cartridges. There's a company called Telegames, released a lot of Lynx games, but they kept releasing games kind of after the official death of the machine, and they come on different clear-looking carts. I don't have a single one of those because they're all massively expensive, and I really can't be getting into that. So, I am now going to give you a little taste using emulators of why we were absolutely blown away the first time we saw an Atari Lynx. We were used to seeing the Game Boy that looked like this. And then the Lynx looked like this. And 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 and 12 and 13 and 14 and 15 and 16 and 17 and 18 and 19 and 20 and 21 and 22 and 23 and 24 and 25 and 26 and 27 and 28 and 29 and 30 and 31 and 32 and 33 and 34 and 35 and 36 and 37 and 38 and 39 and 40 and 41 and 42 and 43 and 44 and 45 and 46 and 47 and 48 and 49 and 50 and 51 and 52 and 53 and 54 and 55 and 56 and 57 and 58 and 59 and 60 and 61 and 62 and 63 and 64 and 65 and 66 and 67 and 68 and 69 and 70 and 71 and 72 and 73 and 74 and 75 and 76 and 77 and 78 and 79 and 80 and 81 and 82 and 83 and 84 and 85 and 86 and 87 and 88 and 89 and 90 and 91 and 92 and 93 and 94 and 95 and 96 and 97 Well, not exactly like that, of course. That's like an emulated nonsense. I'm now going to show you the screen of this, which is... I think they're a little bit blurrier than they used to be, probably due to slowly failing components, but it was much less blurry than the old Game Boy, and obviously a lot prettier. This is running on batteries, so we'll probably run out in 2 seconds flat. On! Dun 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 dun. I should probably turn the lights off for this. And here we go with California Games, a game that came with the Atari Lynx, so we'd all seen it. Gotta say, this does kind of look like crap through the viewfinder, I'm afraid, hence why I used the quick emulated bit before. Dun, 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 dun. Go on then, we saw surfing briefly there. I'm going to quickly, very quickly, show you BMX, where you kind of do an incredibly dangerous BMX course without wearing a helmet, which I always found slightly ridiculous. I can barely see what the hell's going on. Whee! So the problem is I can't see the actual screen from this distance, I can only see what the viewfinder is picking up. And yeah, that's about that. Right, let's get back onto the hardware, for I shall be covering games in a separate video, because if these videos get too long, I've discovered by looking at the statistics that almost none of the audience actually sit through to the end. Let's start with a look at the accessory everybody wanted. By necessity, it is, of course, the power adapter. Because, as we previously said, you weren't really going to be playing your Lynx on the bus for long unless your dad actually owned a battery manufacturing plant, so you'd want to plug it in wherever you went. Mind you, we keep laughing at the battery life of the Lynx. It was better than the Game Gear's battery life, wasn't it? And it had a better screen, and it was more powerful. It was a bit, Game Gear was a bit smaller though, and had Sonic the Hedgehog and, you know, games people wanted to play. So I suppose that's a factor, really, isn't it? Speaking of games, there were actually 3 designs of Lynx cartridge. Well, the early ones before the telegame stuff came in that we mentioned earlier. Allow me to demonstrate. This is the one that is by far, far, far the most common and brought in relatively early in the life. It has a lip on it, so when you put your cartridge in, you can then pull it out with the lip. Because the early ones didn't have that. I draw your attention to Blue Lightning, a fantastic game. One of the 3 launch titles, I think. It was Blue Lightning, Zalor Mercenary, and Electro Cop, if I remember correctly. But this has nothing on at all. The really early ones didn't. You just put it in, and then have to pull it out using the little blobs on the top. Well, at this time period, it would have been a Lynx 1. And it was a bit of a pain in the bum to get in and out. So they came up with another design, putting on this T with a pen. No, I think that's probably done by whoever I bought this from. By putting on these ridges here, so therefore making it much easier to pull it in and out. An Electrocop there. But no, the old ridged version came in, and my goodness, it made everything a lot bloody easier. I wish I had a Blue Lightning, actually, with that sort of back on. Maybe I'll keep an eye out for one. No, I'll probably forget about it and not care. Yes, that is far more likely. These were very, very interesting games from a technical point of view, by the way. Blue Lightning and Electrocop, but they used considerable amounts of the power of the machine, because it has like a sprite scaling thing in the Lynx. A bit like the... You know how the Super Nintendo had that Super 7 mode where it could scale sort of planes and things? That would do the same thing with sprites. And as a result, you can like run into the screen and Electrocop. And Blue Lightning, an Afterburner game, looks absolutely stunning. One of my earliest memories of being absolutely blown away by a game. There's a bit in Blue Lightning where you're flying about and blowing stuff up, blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly it all goes quiet and you fly over a city at night. And there's nothing going on, and it just looks incredibly beautiful for the time. And this is, you know, when we were used to seeing the Game Boy stuff. Do you know what? I'm actually going to edit that footage in at the end of this video from an emulator, just so you can see that, because it was a heck of a thing. Amazing game, Blue Lightning. You can... there was a sequel. Hang on. This is one of those horrible memories that's coming back. There was a sequel, and it was only for the Jaguar CD, and it's bloody dreadful, which is a real shame. There's a really good Retro Gamer article on Blue Lightning if you have access to that magazine. Anyway, let's look at a box, what the games came in. They were cardboard. They got damaged quite easily, much like sort of Nintendo ones, and you'd often get a little pamphlet that told you about the game called an instruction manual. That's interesting, isn't it? I'll bet none of you could have guessed that. Tell you what you did used to get with these games occasionally were little pin badges, little enamel pin badges with the logo of the game on. I don't have any of those, weirdly. I did have some. I don't know what happened to them. Which is annoying. You'll just have to imagine what they look like. Think enamel pin badges made out of a vaguely gold-coloured metal, and you're there. But yeah, Clax. Clax was basically the best puzzle game it kind of had, really. The problem is it's not exactly Tetris, is it? Nobody actually cares about clacks.
Has.
I said nobody cares about clacks.
Has.
Nobody cares.
Has.
Fine, right, somebody cares about clacks, apparently. Anyway, here's another important thing. Cigarette lighter adapter. So you could play it in the car and probably flatten the car's battery at the same bloody time. Anyway, look how crap these boxes are, by the way. A lot of these were just released in these real Tesco value looking boxes. My God. Oh, dearie me. Anyway, this is a sun visor stroke screen guard, or screen guard even, for the Lynx 2. There we are. Screen guards on it. I'll put it on upside down. That's not going to help, is it? There we go. Clunk click every trip. And now your screen is protected. But equally, flip this up and construct it a bit. And actually, this is incredibly useful because it was very hard to play the screen with any sort of light on it. For the light in these old things were not massively powerful. And so now, when you turn it on, you see absolutely nothing because I haven't put a game in it. Quick, show us the intro to Blue Lightning, for it is amazing. This might be a better way to record it for the next video, actually. Interesting point. Is it actually loading? I can't tell. This is the problem. The cartridges, especially over time, have got a bit daffy, and you have to keep sort of pushing them in and out and making sure they fit in. I might start blowing on them like they do with NES cartridges. Hang on, let's have it go. Yay! Oh no, it doesn't look any better at all. Oh no, wait! There we have it. Doing really well right up until the Atari System font there. Hang on, what year did it say this was? I got that thing at the bottom again. 1989. I thought it said 1991 for some reason the first time around. I was like, I thought that was a launch game, damn you. But no, it was merely me not being able to read numbers through the bloody viewfinder. So yeah, that's looked like a sort of shitey accessory, but it was actually quite important at the time. Hey, going back to the fact that the battery doesn't last very bloody long, they released an external battery pack for it. Oh my God, right. Dun, 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 dun. It's bigger than a space station. Ooh, lanyard still in it, my God. I don't think I've ever taken this out of the box. Oh my God. This was the external battery pack for the Atari Lynx. It's as big as the thing, and considerably heavier, if I remember, because... Wait for it. Oh, I've got no idea how you open it, actually. Is there some sort of clip under here? Oh, no, here we are. There is a spinning thing. Out you go. Threads. Right. It takes 6, I repeat, 6 D-cell batteries. They're these giant buggers. So, yeah, it kind of weighs a ton, and so... It means you can play it for much longer on the move, but on the downside, yeah, you've now got to basically take a house brick with you. Blimey. Well, you tried, Atari. I won't say you didn't try, and my God, you didn't succeed. The last time I ever saw these for sale were in Game, the retail shop in the UK for buying video games and that, along with the Atari Jaguar, and they were being sold off for bugger all. I think it was like £20 for a brand new Lynx in the box, and... I think the Jaguars were really cheap as well, and I didn't have any money at the time or I'd have bought the bloody lot, and I really wish I had. But I didn't, and my time machine doesn't work yet, so I can't sort that out. Here's a little bit of amusement for you. A box that the Lynx 2 came in, showing off various games, but there's a massive sticker on it that says, "Range of interchangeable software cartridges available, ask for details." They may as well have just had a picture of a crying child in it that says, "Please buy some games. Please, sir. Please. I need to eat and my shoes are on fire." Oh, and here's possibly my favourite of all the accessories for the Lynx, the bloody great carry bag. These were very common because, of course, they were too big to fit in the pocket, so you kind of needed a bag to carry it around in. Now, this is the second version. You can put your Lynx in there. You see all the little partitions you can move around, have bits and bobs. And look, the games go in the top. The reason this is the second version is the first version is one of the worst design things I've ever seen in my bloody life. You see this flap here that velcros down to keep the games in? It didn't have those, they just fitted in these things. So as soon as you moved the bag in any particular way, these would just fall out and then wrap around and scratch the screen. Brilliant. I can only presume the designers then went on to design game cases for the Sega Saturn or something. Absolutely ludicrous. Anyway, in our next video we shall have a look at some games, which I'm hoping to record directly off the screen, but frankly I'm not sure that's going to be possible in any sort of viewable thing, so I may have to end up with bloody emulation. Blech. But I must just reiterate, especially because we've laughed at the size and the battery life of it so much, how bloody amazing this thing was at the time for a portable device. I think that's why some of us still love the damn thing after all these years, despite its many faults and the fact that not that many of the games are really that good. Anyway, here's that Blue Lightning footage.
Subscribe for more.